Good evening, primetime partiers. It's primetime party time. That time in the evening when it's 9 p.m. on Monday nights, and you are here at ptptshow.com. Welcome back to our hour of all things media and entertainment, live on the air and on your time, wherever you stream podcasts. Tonight, we are revisiting, reliving, and analyzing a Saturday morning cartoon, Jackie Chan Adventures, and our new segment, Saturday Morning Cartoons Revisited. Daniel and I will first give our toasts and roasts of the past week before we hit the rewind VHS style to our WB morning cartoon of this week, Jackie Chan Adventures. Hey, Daniel.
Hey, Tracy. How's it going? Another show. We're in animation land. We're in kids primetime now, but we're still doing protagonists. Or names of protagonists in the show title, Jackie Chan Adventures. Super stoked on this one. Super stoked you're here. Welcome.
Yes.
And but before all, toast and roast. What do you toast to? What are you roasting to this week, Tracy?
All right. It's the beginning of spring, March 1st. And I will toast to this past weekend was my 28th birthday. And I feel very spoiled and celebrated for a quarantine birthday. It was very low-key. Just did, I hiked with the Chibi and Sean. Got some really good katsu down in Kearney Mesa area, which if you go, there's a really authentic Japanese restaurant called Inami Tonkatsu Izakaya. Very good. It'd probably be a really good place to go eventually when things are safer as a group with friends, because they do have a lot of izakaya style is a lot of snackies and drinkies. And they had one thing that was dried squid that was then tempura fried with seaweed, and eat that, drink sake. You're having a good time, which is what I did. And then afterwards, I just kind of continued on my eating train with my family bubble. So yeah, it was really nice. And I watched Howl's Moving Castle, which is a favorite of mine, and Kung Fu Hustle. Those are my comfort movies. Love me some Ghibli. Love me some Stephen Chow. So yeah, that's my toast. And also a toast that Daniel will go into in more detail is the Pokemon 25th anniversary. We couldn't have this episode and not talk about this as a Saturday morning cartoon of many of us 90s kids. True. You can't see me because we're not filming, but I am rocking a Pikachu t-shirt tonight that was part of a Levi's collaboration that was rightfully so targeted to me in an email newsletter. So
wait, what's going on the t-shirt? You I see Pikachu. What's going on? What is the Pikachu is just napping on top of the Levi's logo?
Yeah, Pikachu is napping on top of the Levi's logo, which whoever picked this was smart, because I specifically bought it thinking I haven't seen a t-shirt where Pikachu is napping. He's always just doing the regular pose, and I was like, man, I want zonked out Pikachu, because that's me.
That's what's towards you. Wow.
Doing core. So yeah, we're real excited about that. My roast of the week is related to some local news, and it's some slightly sad news, very sad news, that a restaurant that I never got to try but saw featured on much media that I consume is Spoon by H, announcing that they were closing. But what's a little bit more troublesome is that part of the reason they closed was because of a lot of disputed charges and fraudulent claims. So someone would order a mass amount of food and then later say they never received the food. And for those people, that's why there's karma. No, I wouldn't actually be afraid of karma. I would actually be afraid of people who are very loyal and have a lot of time. I'm just the COVID is not the time to give the internet the opportunity to hunt you down like a dog.
We are one event away from people just taking the law into their own hands. It's vigilante season, and this could push them. This is roast worthy. This is awful. I didn't know.
It's really awful. I've seen many interviews of this woman. They've had this restaurant for about a decade, and it started out as just desserts, and then they started to add in all awesome Korean food, and some of it slightly fusiony. And I remember the big thing was like David Chang discovered it and then really featured it a lot on a lot of content. So
I think I know what restaurant. Yeah, okay. I'll have
yeah,
to come back to that.
so I hope they do have a good GoFundMe going up, and it's lots of people are loyal to this restaurant. So hopefully we can see them do another iteration. The restaurant business is hard, but people, please be ethical. What is this? I just don't understand people who would do this, especially during COVID to like small businesses. Like, I don't think you should rip
Crazy.
off anyone, but like, why not a corporation?
Enough people did this. Like, yeah,
Why
why
a
not a
little guy?
corporation?
Come on. So
I don't understand this. I
that's
don't understand. I
that's
don't know how
my
to sit with it.
roast. I feel very, very sad, especially because I make lists of restaurants that I want to go to in LA when that's a possible thing to do. And it's also pushing me to go like when you can go, Trace. You
Yeah.
better hit up all those spots because you never know. So everyone support your local businesses and do so in a nice, honest manner, not like whoever these dirt bags are who did that to this restaurant.
Well said.
So I know not
Awful.
to lead it on a somber note, but back into a different toast. I know
Right, right.
how rough was that transition. No,
No,
we can drop the mic on that one,
it's
and then
necessary
we
to call
can
that out,
pick it
though.
right up to brighten our days with your toast.
All right. Well, okay. We'll rewind back to Pokemon 25th.
There we go.
Because that's. I mean, don't get me wrong. They should be called out. This is awful.
Yeah.
But in the good of the week, Pokemon is celebrating its 25th anniversary. Obviously, massive franchise, and it's basically like it is really cool to see. It's really cool to see like the it have a lot of fun with itself.
Yeah.
And particularly, the only thing that I've actually really paid attention to, or that's come across my way so far, is that they had this like celebration video that they released, and it's so fun and cool, and it's like this. It's a 25-minute kind of presentation of, and the first 5.5 minutes are a really fun video that I recommend to everybody. That it very like rapidly. Goes over the history of the franchise and how it evolved every year and what it brought, year after year to each iteration of it. And it's so fun to kind of like see where it goes from, the games to the anime to Pokemon Go and everything in
Yeah.
between, and how the themes kind of like come in and out of the background. And it's just a blast. It's an absolute blast. And then after that, they continued and sort of showed what's in the immediate future of the franchise, which looks really fun. I haven't really played much Pokemon in a while, but they always do kind of seem to get you back in. I remember I was
They know how to suck us all back in, as I can say, wearing the merch. Like they'll get you.
merch.
Um,
I know
this
I
brand
was
literally evolves. You can evolve forms, and in the game and outside the game, you're
yeah.
changing platforms, getting on your phone, getting on a. I'm. Would this be a Switch type game, or is this more of a
Oh yeah.
PlayStation game?
No,
Oh no,
no.
it's a Switch.
Pokemon's like pretty exclusively Nintendo, I believe. So
I
you'll see
thought it
stuff
was
on the Switch.
Nintendo.
Did you
But I have to fact check because I am not a gamer. I try. I
did you
really
ever
try to make myself do it.
did you ever play on the Nintendo 64? They had Pokemon Snap. So
No, I did not have a 64. Real
oh.
point of contingent.
Well,
Yeah.
they've got you covered.
Yeah.
One of the more
Ooh.
exciting announcements is that back in the Nintendo 64 days, Pokemon came out with a game that was basically like you ride around in this roller coaster kind of thing, or a train, or
Yes.
I don't even know.
I
It's
love it
like a
already.
cross between the two. And you
Yeah.
just take pictures. The whole game is about taking pictures. Each level, you
Wait.
just go from beginning
Yes.
to end with a camera, and you have to take all these pictures for the professor, and then at the end you get to keep them, and now in this new one you get to put filters on them and whatnot. But this whole game is strictly about taking pictures of Pokemon, and the fan base has been asking for it for a very long time. I don't have a Switch, but I'll have to find my way to get my hands on it and try it out, because Pokemon Snap is back, and that's like
Yay.
that's the really exciting one. And then if you played like the fourth generation games, I think they're getting a remake. So whoever was into those,
Ooh.
I kind of stopped around that time and came back, and I did end up playing one of them. Actually, they were good. They were sweet. So they're
I
doing a
did
lot with
red
that
and
region.
blue and then silver and gold. So I
Silver
know
and
I
gold.
like
I skipped
came
those.
back to do
Yeah.
those. Is it anything like, you know how the Game Boy had like that cartridge camera add-on where you could take like little selfies on it? I have no idea how it worked. But this was like
If the
this isn't
question is if it's anything like that, I think it's nothing like that. But I do remember that. Yeah, absolutely.
I was
Yes,
like,
that
is
was
that
something that
how Oh
existed.
no, because the snap would be you're taking pictures of what's
It's
going on
yeah,
the
it's
screen,
all in the game. Yeah,
not literally of yourself.
but that was the
Okay.
thing that is detailed in the video. So if you watch the
Mm.
video, you'll get a nostalgic blast of whatever that camera was too.
See, this is another push to watch the video because I have not watched this video yet. I will
It's a good video.
after this show, and I will be much more informed
We'll link it in the show
on
notes.
the Pokemon anniversary. Yes. And I'm excited to see. I also think it's pretty awesome that a brand has so much loyalty that people would watch a 25-minute promo video. I'm like, man, I usually make like 30-second to 1 minute caps.
It's
But it's like it's Pokemon.
it's
Like
Pokemon. It's Pokemon.
everyone's gonna watch.
Yeah, and people want people. It's really fun too because people are gonna watch, and people are gonna watch specifically because they've wanted this to happen for a long time. Snap's been gone since the Nintendo 64, and they've had a history of redoing the games like Red and Blue and Gold and Silver, and now they're up to Diamond and Pearl, and so it is something that people have been waiting for. So they came in, they celebrated themselves, they gave everybody exactly what everybody's been asking for years, and they called it a day. And it's really fun. It's a great presentation. Why are we talking so much about Pokemon? You will find out. It is Pokemon's extremely important to this episode. It's not what this episode's about, but it is extremely important to this episode. But before that, I don't have too much to roast this week, though. I'm trying to keep my YouTube kind of algorithm clean, and it's very difficult to do. And one of the things that's very difficult to do against is video essays can be great, and criticism videos can be great, right? But it's such a fine line crossing between like decent criticism and just absolute cynicism. And
Yeah.
it's like I don't know if I'm roasting. I think I am actually. I think I'm just roasting cynical YouTube criticism videos that kind of like miss the point and just go too far into just trashing something rather than trying to bring about a productive conversation about something. And I don't want
Yeah.
that on my YouTube homepage. And I got to steer clear of that. And that's about it. What are we toasting with?
We are toasting, and I agree to that. There's a good way to do reviews, and then there's a way where you can go too positive where you just seem like you're afraid to say anything wrong, and then there's the ones where you're just like, man, you leave it alone. That
Yes.
you've said enough, and now you're just getting mean.
Yeah,
And just a lot of
absolutely.
times you kind of don't seem too smart when you take something too far in a
Yeah.
negative direction because it just seems like, oh, you just want to hate on it. It's like if you actually say something constructive, people will want to listen to it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
back to our toasting. Today, most days we imbibe in some sort of like cocktail or drink, but for Jackie Chan Adventures, it was a morning cartoon. So we are doing, also because the character Jade was asked many times to make tea for Uncle. So we are doing our own takes on tea. And mine today is actually a hojicha latte. It's something I really like, but it's roasted green tea, and then I added a little half and half up in there.
Oh,
If
that's
I had
nice.
some oolong, I would have done that since that's more like they show a lot of like I want to say this show is based in San Francisco based on
It
all of the
is.
scenes. Yes, I just wanted to verify that.
Can
And
confirm.
they look like they go to Chinatown quite a bit and go to restaurants, and normally you would get oolong tea with that. So as we try to keep our food and bev associated with the show, it's almost on point, but it is It is tea in its essence. What is your tea tonight?
I thought I had more fancy tea, but I need to go get some. I'm drinking some green tea and splash some honey in there just for the voice, so we could have a good show. Not as
Yeah.
extravagant, but it'll do the job. So cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.
I'm gonna take a sip actually.
Up.
Oh yes, pinkies up. Yes. And when we're back, the Jackie Chan Adventures on Kids WB.
Woo.
Okay, Tracy. What is the Jackie Chan Adventures? What are the Jackie Chan
Adventures? Jackie Chan's got to get the Talisman. You'll get that more later. So Jackie Chan Adventures. This is an animated series, obviously, because we're doing Saturday morning cartoons. But the series was created by John Rogers, but also with Duane Capizzi and Jeff Klein. It aired from 2000 to 2005. The cast is namesake Jackie Chan, Stacy Chan, James Ye, Sab Shimono, tons of others, including Clancy Brown, Julian Sands, and Adam Baldwin. Season and episode run. It ran for 5 seasons and 95 episodes. Like a lot of animated series, the song has both a theme song intro and a theme song outro. So they have some fun with that as well. And if you've ever listened to the end theme, it is a pretty good time. And we'll get into that a little bit on our sound bites. But recapping the series, this is an episode that we are going to do only season 1 of this show to open it up for later Saturday morning cartoon editions. So for season 1, it is the 12 Talisman Shendu season. And it introduced the whole concept of this show. So Jackie Chan plays an archaeologist who runs into his 11-year-old niece and proves that action runs in the family when she arrives from Hong Kong to live with Jackie and his wise old uncle in San Francisco. Meanwhile, Jackie has found an ancient Chinese talisman, and now he has got the government agents and gangsters chasing after him. So if you're thinking this sounds very much like an Indiana Jones-like concept, you are not wrong, because this is also a theme that he did in a movie later that's this one is called Armor of Gods, Chinese Zodiac, but also if you're familiar with his other filmography, Operation Condor, he also plays a archaeologist that is hunting down treasures. But I know, Freudian slip there. So contextual information is from Sci-Fi Wires. How Jackie Chan became an animated superstar 20 years ago with Jackie Chan Adventures. Daniel, you want to go more into this kind of really great, just summary of how this show came to be and all the different people that were involved and the different shows that impacted this show getting on the air?
Yeah, I do. This one's really interesting. This is fun because we have to, a lot of times on this show, we kind of will kind of assume what the pitch was like, and kind of interpret. We actually have a really well detailed story from the Sci-Fi Wire here about, and we'll link to it in the show notes after the show, but about how this show came to be. And it seems that Andy Kaplan, who was the VP of Sony Pictures Television at the time, he watched Rush Hour, obviously loved Rush Hour, and rushed himself over to the head of family entertainment, Sander Schwartz, and basically told him, "Hey, we need to get Jackie Chan on the air. We need a celebrity cartoon. Don't care what the story is, you got to figure that out." And Sander Schwartz brought it to writer John Rogers, who is an actual fan of Chan's filmography, and kind of went home that night, probably over several days, and pitched him and the rest of the characters. And so he brought that to this other writer, Duane Capizzi. And Duane's main concerns came with about how to keep Chan's brand of artistry in the show. And so he went and he added some of the supernatural elements to the series pitch, along with, and this is how it came about, to use, like you were saying, certain aspects of Chan's filmography to fill out his character as an archaeologist on the show. So the series, Chan is working as an archaeologist in his uncle's antique shop. when Jade comes to visit, and the demon Shindu needs the talismans to come back to life and hires a bunch of enforcers, and all of that was created during this time. So they feel like they have a pretty strong pitch. Jackie Chan's obviously on board. They've got the full story down, and they start shopping it to these networks. Sony's pitch hits Kids WB, which was created about 5 years earlier to compete with Fox Kids, is what my understanding is. Now, this is my favorite quote in the entire article, is that the vice president, Donna Friedman, says her job was to build a schedule around Pokemon, which at the time was described basically as Friends. And instead of 8 o'clock on, a Thursday night, it was, Saturday mornings. And the week, so interestingly enough, I guess Kids Prime Time is both, I guess, a 12-hour difference of what 8 to 11 would be on a weeknight on a Saturday morning, and then also from like the 4 to 5 p.m. hour on Kids WB during the weekday. But basically, she was building a schedule around Pokemon. And this is one of those like amazing projects where just everything kind of comes together. It's like this magical sort of storm where it's like Jackie Chan's, hitting it big in America, and they have all of these, there's a ton of ambition. There's a ton of energy from WB to kind of rise up and seize their moment with all the programming that they're building. And so they just get tons of talent attached. Like these are the same people who were doing back during this time, like the DC cartoons. They're future Marvel Cinematic Universe story editors. And another toast in this show, like this is really fun. I remember any animated series that I've gone back and revisited that I watched as a kid, any interview that you listen to with any voice actor mentions one real like dialogue director, voice director, right? And that's Susan Blue, and she's on dialogue direction for this. Like, go and look up her career if you haven't. She's done everything that we pretty much ever watched as kids. Her career is so storied, so insane, and to see her and the rest of these people attached to this show, it's very obvious kind of the quality that's kind of brewing here. And then, on September 9th, 2000, on the 5th anniversary of Kids WB, the show premiered. Did you watch it?
Yes. So I watched it. I know. Quick answer. I watched it on the air as a kid. I don't remember when I stopped watching. Since this show went on for 5 seasons, I don't remember that many seasons, but I'll also say when you go and rewatch this show, it feels more like a long movie than it does a typical TV show, because I have to say they are just so like well crafted to transition one into the next, to where you really do feel like you're just watching one cohesive thing, even with the varied ad breaks from watching this on Crackle. It still has a good amount of continuity. So that's one really big toast to this show.
Yeah.
But also, I'm just a huge Jackie Chan fan. It was all of his films were very much a part of my childhood. My dad would go to Fry's Electronics, which also, RIP, used to just wander around there as a child, look at the aquarium, pick up some like Jackie Chan DVDs, Jet Li DVDs, Ghibli DVDs, and go home, because it was before Netflix. So you really just had to try and buy your films. So
right.
That was how the
Fry's
story
also
went.
Had insane prices on like imported DVDs.
They would be like $4 for movies, and it was mostly because they just weren't like, whatever the equivalent of like a Marvel movie was on. If it was anything remotely alternative, it was just marked down to be crazy cheap. So you would just like pick a few and be like, I'm gonna watch like 7 movies this weekend. It's gonna be great. In general, also watched a lot of Hong Kong cinema as a kid. So yeah, a lot of kung fu and martial arts, also a lot of the comedy. And he was probably one of my favorite actors growing up because of that. I think it also was like a pretty easy like father-daughter movie experience. Like we can both like Jackie Chan. So, which is probably a lot for a lot of people growing up in our time period. It was It's like a fun action movie because there was like a little bit of everything, and it was a lot more comical and a lot less like Quentin Tarantino blood and guts. So even though I also really liked Kill Bill as a kid, we won't get into that. But yeah, so he started out as a stuntman and always wanted to do his own stunts. He mentions this on the end of these episodes, always kind of have some kid who's like 11 years old or 12 who's like interviewing Jackie Chan from off camera, and he answers a lot of the questions like just like he would be in like a studio audience asking, kids questions and wanting them to also achieve the kind of dreams he did. So he worked as a stuntman on Bruce Lee's movies, and then he wanted to do his own because, he wanted to also be in front of the camera with his face, not just his really good martial arts moves. And I also think in his history before he did martial arts, he also did a lot of acrobatics. So that's why he's able to do all these really cool, like that's kind of when they're getting into the keeping the artistry. Like there's always kind of like a very visual element to all of his films that you'll notice over time, even if it's just dramatic destruction of building. There's like a flow to it that's hard to explain but easy to take in as a viewer.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so anything from The Drunken Master, which is a pretty old one, but it's very funny and pretty self-explanatory. He plays a really drunk like kung fu master, and he almost is always like swigging a bottle as he's beating people up. Hilarious. Very much recommend. And then there's all the other classics, Rumble in the Bronx. But then when you're getting into his other kind of Hollywood breakthrough movies, because they do kind of break up his film career into like things that were doing really well just in like Hong Kong cinema, things that were kind of transitioning over, and then they pretty much mark Rush Hour as the thing that really got him into Hollywood and all these other movie franchises. Because what's very unique and awesome about his career is like he was pretty much always doing multiple audience movies at a certain point of time. Once he kind of broke through to the American audience, he was doing those movies, but he also was still doing movies over there too. So, but it's Rush Hour is what kind of ticked him off to be the celebrity to create a animated series from. So you can see how the films kind of start to impact the series there. And then, yes, his role in this show is very much inspired by his movies. And there is also a movie called Chinese Zodiac 12, CZ12. And the plot is also that, they're going back to this palace, and then there's looting by British and French soldiers. And among the treasures stolen were 12 bronze heads of the animals of the Chinese zodiac.
Really?
So that's kind of what leads us into watching this Talisman series. So that's like my kind of background of the show, but also background with Jackie Chan, because that's like a big part of why you watch Jackie Chan adventures. I think for a lot of us too, it's cool to see that somebody got a show on in like the early 2000s that was like incorporating different voices in storytelling. Outside of anime, you don't get a ton of representation in the Saturday morning cartoon lineup or anything. So that's cool to see. I think the only other shows I noted that kind of got that is right after this show was American Dragon Jake Long, which is another kids TV show. Though it was apparently also originally created for Fox in live action and then got picked up to be Disney animated.
It was Disney XD,
yeah,
wasn't
but
it?
that
Yeah. Huh.
but that wasn't as much of a diverse cast of voice actors. So I think that's still something that the Jackie Chan adventure shows has, and something that Jackie Chan himself had in the era of the 2000s, like early 2000s, late 90s, as he was transcending through a pretty like homogenous, film lineup, and now Saturday morning cartoons. So it's nice to note his breakthrough there in representation, but also, a good note to really good storytelling. He was able to really market a lot of his projects that way as well. So, Daniel, your experience with the show.
So I definitely watched this on air as a kid. I watched the first season distinctly. There was a kid, the kids that lived down the street, and they were kind of the kids that did their own stunts, still do. And I would go down there, and I'd spend after schools down there before my parents would get home. I'd hang out at their place, and lo and behold, Jackie Chan was on. So we'd watch the Jackie Chan adventures. We'd also watch his movies. I wasn't privy to which movies their parents had brought home at the time, but we definitely, like, Jackie Chan was a favorite in that household, and really grateful that I was able to experience all that. When season 2 aired, I distinctly remember watching it on the morning kids WB primetime block, and that was like one of my like must watch shows. I remember no matter which adult's house I was at, like if I was up at my grandmother's house, if I was at my aunt's house, and I had spent the night there, it was Jackie Chan in the morning. Like no matter what, I was watching Demon Portal Saga. I was really into it. With that said, I think I stopped watching probably after season 3. I want to say that between seasons 3 and 4, there's a pretty hard reset in the story, and or like a soft reset, perhaps. I think it's a soft reset. They just kind of like bring on a new plot line, bring on some new villains. Uh, yeah, I think I made maybe a conscious decision to like either get back to it or try something else, or who knows. But yeah, that was pretty much that. And I always remembered it fondly, and I always do kind of wish I'd maybe stuck with it. Now I don't think, in 2005 I was super concerned with it, and that's my bad. That's not the show's bad. That's my bad.
No, we just didn't have regrets at that point. Our brain had to develop to really like start to hold on to that shame.
Yeah.
So, we get there.
Well, yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I've always remembered it fondly. And I actually did go back and revisit some season 2 episodes a couple years ago when I had first moved here to LA. I just distinctly remember like Saturday mornings, I would be like, you know what? I've got Saturday mornings open now. Like, why don't I like throw on some nostalgia? Why don't we go through Jackie Chan adventures again? And yeah, so I started to do the Demon Portal Saga, and then life took different turns, I guess. But really happy that we got back into it to do this show, and so this is my first time since really the year it aired, revisiting the first season of the show. And seeing just how serialized it is, like just how much of a coherent story happens here. We watched this on Crackle, which is a fun service. How was your so? What device did you watch this on, and how was your experience?
I watched it on my television. I do have the Crackle app because a lot of times when I use my Fire Cube, I just try to search for something I want to see. And if it's on any app for free, I just go like, boom, we're not going to be picky about it. We're going to download that app. I also used to have the Crackle app when it was the only app that had Seinfeld on it before Seinfeld got on Hulu. And that's also where Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee was on. So I have actually used Crackle before this viewing experience. It's actually pretty good for like, you don't really get to pick what's on there. It's whatever they've featured, but it is a lot of free content. So I give them that. And it's not horribly done. There are a lot of ads. So I'd say if you're watching a movie, it shouldn't be a first timer movie because I tried to do that and too many ad breaks. And even on this show, you do have to kind of suffer through the ad breaks, and or you get to the point of me where you actually interact with the optional interactive ad in order to get out of future ad
You had an
breaks for at
interactive
least
ad?
an episode.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't have. I watched this on the PlayStation Crackle app, and they gave me 0 interact. I sat through all of the ad breaks, which I tallied up because they tell you how long you have at the beginning of an ad break, and it's about 2 to 3 minutes. Between 13 episodes, I probably watched about 80 something minutes of ads or Operation Condor. So
yeah,
I'm glad that you had the option to do an interactive ad.
Yeah, there was like one where it was IKEA and I got to like scroll through the different room setups. That was actually kind of cute. I was like, for 30 seconds, I'll do this. But the other ones were all like ads on the same, like some sort of like medication. And I was like, I need you to stop. Like, and it would be not just like one in a row. I would get the same ad 3 times in the same ad break, and I would just be like, I mean,
Yeah.
I get there's not a lot of sponsors here. This is a free app, but give me some diversity
I
in the
agree.
ads.
I agree. Watching the same ad 4 times in a row is it does get difficult in that kind of
Feels a
fun
little rude.
insanity way. It was like yeah, there are a couple of ads that I'm very ingrained into the back of my head
Yeah.
forever probably now because of this viewing experience. But I mean otherwise I like
Otherwise, not bad. I'd say for a non-premium packaged streaming service, you're getting a very average to, I mean, I would say better than average in the sense that other than that, you never lost your place or anything
yes.
like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, this service for me is a lot like Tubi TV with slightly more ambitious menus. They like play trailers at the home screen, which
Yeah.
Tubi TV does not do. But what I do like about both of them is that they don't force you to make an account. The content is free with ads. And if you would like preferences, if you would like search saves, if you would like it to save your place if you're watching a long running series, you can sign up for an account. But if you don't feel like you need any of that, you can download the app and do whatever you would like at will with no strings attached. And that's something that I appreciate about these two services. Crackle
Yeah.
happened to have Jackie Chan Adventures for us. And another thing that I noticed about Crackle is that it does not take official metadata. Somebody internally is writing descriptions for every movie that goes on, and they're they're writing their own log lines. And if you want some fun reading, reading whatever the internal team at Crackle has to say about each movie to try to get you invested in it and to try to get you to watch it is somewhat fun. I have no idea how they're allowed to do that. I don't know. But
I
it's
mean,
fun.
if they're hiring, we got 2 people here who will freelance.
I do that
That
actually.
work.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah. um, but
We
yeah,
do that for fun.
yeah. One
Yeah, that
thing
seems like a
though,
good time.
yeah, one thing though about Crackle, about this show in particular, did you notice that the episodes are slightly out of order?
I was wondering because I did go back after I watched some and would like watch them again and kind of question, being like, sequence wise, did I watch this correctly? So, what is the correct order of episodes, or mainly which were the ones that were wildly out of order?
So there's nothing too wildly out of order.
Okay.
The one of the strengths I would say of how Jackie Chan's able to work as a serial, or Jackie Chan Adventures is able to work as a serialized show, despite being a Saturday morning cartoon, is that the first 2 episodes are really heavily story oriented, and the last 2 episodes
Yes.
are really heavily story oriented. Everything else is a step on the way between those 2 points. But for the most part, it's minor references. So
Got it.
like on Crackle, the episodes are somewhat out of order. It doesn't it doesn't whiplash you through the viewing experience. But there are some minor things about like who has each talisman at the time,
Yeah.
and yeah, just little things like that. Really, some like minor dialogues references. Season 2, I scoped kind of about that because I have watched that in the past, and the episode order is wildly different from what I watched. Something that I really like about
Interesting.
season 2. Something I really like about season 2 is after season 1, you kind of get a break from the storyline. You get all these self-contained episodes before the actual plot starts, and that is gone on the Crackle viewing experience. It's pretty
Oh,
easy
good.
to see. I found out that you could just check the air dates, even though they're out of order on Crackle. If you look, you can, and it's only 13 episodes, so it's
Oh.
easy to swap the 4 that are kind of out of place and just barely out of place. But yeah, it's not a big deal, but it's
I feel
there.
like I've watched a lot of animated series specifically within anime where that's like a typical thing. Like after you wrap up a season and there's like a huge fight or something, there's always like a few episodes that are just like kind of softer. Not a lot's happening. Like maybe they tackle some bad guys, but they're very like, you know, low stakes, and they might start like sprinkling in like, oh, I think there might be a new enemy, but don't worry about
Don't
them
worry about
just
it
yet.
yet. Yeah. I
No,
love
right now
that.
it's beach vacation time. And
Yeah.
then, eventually
Eventually the
3
pod
episodes
starts back
later,
up.
they're like, okay, they're here. They're fully here. And now you must address.
I really love that structure.
I do too.
Yeah. This season is not like that though. It's pretty
No.
much full stop. Obviously
Yeah.
there's 13 episodes. Minus the big set piece beginnings and ends. That amounts to roughly one talisman per episode. Sometimes they'll do
I was
two and
gonna
skip
say
one.
there's 12 Zodiac, so 13 episodes is keeping it pretty tight
Yeah. Um,
on each talisman.
Absolutely. So what'd you think? What'd you think as they try to get all the talismans and stop Shindu from reincarnating himself? How was the
I
series?
I think what's so great about watching this as an adult is like there's some shows that you watched as a kid that you go like, I don't know how I was sucked in. And then this one was like, I'm fully sucked into this, not just this season, but this series. So like as soon as I like blasted through the first season and then I was starting to get into the second season, I was like, wait a
Were you
minute,
really?
I need to focus on season one. No, I feel like a lot of it too is they do take a lot of the styles from his movies. So if you do like that, you'll like this show.
It is really fun how much visual direction there is in this series and
Yes.
how much like choreography there is. I think it's Police Story 2 and Jackie Chan Adventures both have these like playground fights. And there's just these like really fun camera pans. Like Jade's introduction is this really creative pan. The series has a ton of visual storytelling, a ton of camera movements, has a ton of like really interesting choreography that nails the Chan brand, for lack of a better term.
And then a lot of the concepts are extremely like high for a animated show that was airing during this time. So they have like the episode where she's learning about Viper, which is this snake talisman, but also this woman who's also kind of a spy. And if you've watched any of his other movies, there's always kind of the not like a Bond girl, but more like a competitor spy person who usually is kind of salacious and cutting and maybe like also a little bit, and I think because this was also the talisman based on the snake, she's a little sneaky and ends up taking stuff. So that one episode was also really cool because you see Jade coming into the picture and seeing kind of like how her moral compass is tested and then going like, hey, I got conned by her too. And it's kind of her realizing like, I won't go on that path, but I kind of could. I have the skills. uh, but
It's true
I could
though.
do it. Yeah, and then they
Jade's
have like yeah, oh, go ahead,
No, I was
Jade.
just to your point. I mean, that's one of the things that makes this show great, right? That's a very early episode, and at this point,
Yeah.
Jade has been a foil to Jackie's Boy Scoutish nature. Which, by the way, we are 43 minutes into this episode, and we did mention it, but maybe do want to revisit this. Jackie Chan, while he is a presence in the show, he's obviously the protagonist, and he obviously comes in at the end. We listed him as the first cast member. James Sia actually plays Jackie in the show. So he plays Jackie with this like Boy Scoutish sort of
Yeah.
esque about him, right? And so Jade comes and she's so radically different, but like to your point, like it's a great early episode to really flesh out her character and show like kind of how different she is, but again, like where that moral compass is and how it does land on that side. Um, yeah, that one was a great one. That one was an absolutely great one.
Yeah, and so Jade is very much like the mentor-mentee relationship that you can see in a few of his films. And then you also have the like bad guys becoming good, good guys becoming bad kind of concept with Toru, where he ends up becoming, on their side
Isn't that
later into the
insane
show.
that they like
Yeah.
layer this character arc like it's sort of telegraphed in the last 6 episodes. It's really interesting. Yeah, it is cool. It is cool that Toru kind of comes over to their side because he's introduced early on as really wasn't he like the main threat to Jackie because there's like the Dark Hand and they're the
Yeah.
3 enforcers that are basically poised to fight Jackie every episode. And they're not extremely threatening, though they are somewhat
No.
fun in character. But
Yeah.
Toru somewhat is threatening. He is sort of able to hold his own often. But he just like it's fun to watch him just get beat up and fail and have the brunt of the failure from the higher ups on his shoulders for the last half of the season, and watch him break over it and watch him get replaced for an episode. And it just leads him to this point where he is forced to go up against Shindu when Shindu is finally freed from, in his true form, and being forced to be the only one to fight Shindu and failing is what breaks him and brings him over to Jade uses the term the J team. But yeah,
I love that. I also love that the Dark Hand is like corporate, because there's an episode where like Toru apparently hasn't been like doing well enough with beating Jackie Chan and Jade, and they're like, yeah, we're bringing in a freelancer, we're bringing in like, the tiger. And I was just like, really? The gang is like, yeah, your numbers haven't been good, we've been losing about a lot of the Talisman here, and so we're bringing in some fresh blood to see who can take this on. And you can also see, like, as he's getting kind of treated poorly at quote unquote work, that's kind of how he starts to go like, maybe I'll join the other side. Like, this is working out for me as well. But yeah, a lot of action movies have that concept where it's like there's like the kind of like fringe bad guy that kind of is like ready to become better. Or in the animated series slash film series Lupin the Third, he's like a thief, but like him and the detective are always kind of like, sometimes they work together, sometimes they're enemies. Like, I feel like that's like a big action movie theme that you see kind of repeat over again. And so they have that. They do the kind of spy versus spy bit where it's Jackie versus Jackie, and that's where there's, I think it's the tiger talisman that's supposed to mean balance, and then there's the yin and yang, and he gets in trouble for like splitting it open, and then it's supposed to be saying there's light and dark in everyone, which huge concept for children's television. Like, again, that kind of concept is how we get the anti-heroes, how we get like Sopranos and Breaking Bad, but we're getting it in Jackie Chan Adventures with he's starting to become a light and dark character when he literally splits. And I mean, it's pretty like, they keep it light still. Like, it starts out with just like, hey, who ate my candy, from Jade.
Right. Yeah. This was my favorite episode. Mainly because of like so it's the last talisman. This is episode 12. And at this point, this is what's really funny is for how inept the villains are at gathering the talismans. It's very obvious that if Shindu needs 12 in order to free himself and have all of his powers and complete his master plan, that he needs to get those talisman by the end of the season. So how is he going to do that when Jackie Chan and Jade have gotten 10 of the 12 up to this, or so far up to this point, right? And it's just so obvious. It's if nobody can defeat Jackie Chan and get the talismans to Shindu, it's going to obviously be Jackie Chan as the one villain that's going to succeed. And lo and behold, that's how they end up at Shindu's office building. I'm not really sure where they hang out, but
it does seem to just be like an office building that has some sort of back room where there's a giant stone dragon.
Yeah,
or you're just like, how'd you get this in the bay?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, something I do really love about like how light this series is in terms of like it's serialized, but it's also somewhat digestible. Is in episode 2, you kind of figure like, okay, like we've gotten through, the first episode of the show. We understand the dynamic. Now we really need to figure out who everybody is. And they ask Valmont at some point why he serves Shendu. And his answer to keep you going until they actually reveal the real motivations that Valmont's after this ancient treasure Shindu has access to is it talks, like the statue talks. I'm going to do what it says. And that just keeps you going until they actually have time to really you show that side of things, and they're able to take the moment in the story when it's time to. But yeah, the tiger episode was definitely my favorite episode, and it was just like so perfect how it came together, and how you're just in hindsight, like it's obvious that Jackie Chan has to be the one to bring the talismans to Shindu.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite talisman?
I did really like, I think the three that I liked the most were the rooster, which is the first one. I did really like the tiger one. I also, and I already talked about the viper episode, but the other one that's worth mentioning is the sheep one. And that is when Jade is able to astral project. And this is another one where you're just like, huge concepts for children's Saturday morning cartoons. It's like, yeah, so let's get this real. She's spirit levitating out of her body and having full on out of body experiences with like the universe. But it's really cool. I feel like even though you're getting this kind of like, even though it's WB, I feel like the most recent thing we could compare it to is kind of like PBS style animation. You're getting something that's very like kind of, it's not high tech, but you're still they're good at still like making that world come to you through the screen. So I think that episode really speaks to that well. It's also another one for Jade's character development because she's getting a lot of the talisman powers throughout this series. So even though it's called Jackie Chan Adventures, she is still almost like on par main character. And when it gets to be the end of the season and you're like, oh no, she has to like go live with her parents in Hong Kong, which when I say this out loud, you're like, a child her age would probably want to by that point. But as a viewer, you're like, no, they can't like break up the team. And then she comes back and it's like, my parents said that I've done such a good job in America that they want me to like study with you a little bit longer. So you're like, yes. And that's also like, you also are like, good. The show goes on.
Yeah, it's so funny. That's the show saying, "Hey, Kids WB loves us." They were renewed a month after they went to air, I think. But yeah,
Nuts.
and then there's that the Jade ending is that's when I knew that I was hooked, and that this wasn't just for the show. I'm now going to I'm gonna watch season 2 as well. It's when she realizes that she's in Hong Kong, and Jackie's like, "Yeah, we get to go visit your parents." She starts to tear up right before the commercial break and leaves you with this, yeah, they're gonna want me to stay, and it's just like this dynamic's going to end. You can tell she's had so much fun, hunting the talisman with her uncle, because we've had so much fun with her hunting the talismans with her uncle. It's pretty incredible. It's a great ending. Yeah, and Jade and Jackie are great co-protagonist. I don't really understand did you know that there are words outside of protagonist and antagonist like deuterology? I don't know them. I've read them once or twice. Yeah, I don't
know. I'd have to really.
They're co-protagonists. This is an aside, but
neurotransmitters to find them.
Those
words.
No, they're in this show. They're through and through co-protagonists. But it's I don't know. It's a blast. It's a great really efficient season. I think
these episodes are short.
Yeah,
20 minutes about, plus some ads because Crackle, but it's quick when you're looking at that, and 13 episodes. And it's interesting because most of the seasons are 13, but I think season 2 is a rogue 39.
yeah, I wonder how that happens. I'm excited to explore that.
Yeah, we'll have to get into season 2 on another episode, because that in itself is interesting. Also because we're just hooked.
Yeah,
we're hooked all over again. Yeah, I mean, one more thing is is Uncle. I love the Uncle character. I feel like, it's one of those shows where as a kid you're like, oh, reminds me of my mom. There's always one more thing before I tried to leave the house. Be like, just you just be like, ah. And then as an adult, I feel like I'm on par with Uncle. I'm like, yeah, who's making me tea? And one more thing.
we all become.
Don't forget that.
That's
You're ruining the balance here. You need to get that together.
That's yeah. And they explore that in the freelancer episode. It's a very uncle heavy episode, and it goes into a lot about how Jade's just like, wait, Jackie's going to become uncle, and then uncle regains his youth for a little while through the immortality dog talisman. That one's a blast too.
Yes. All of these are a blast. All of these are almost like little mini, yeah, like lots of bits of like his movies, because you're just like, everyone gets a new power. They get to take on the town. There's, I also like that they tackle wrestling and just fully call it. They're like, I knew wrestling was fake. It's the power of the ox. And I'm like, guys, taking on. And you think about it later, like, oh, person behind the creatives is in martial arts. And they totally take like digs at wrestling.
Right.
Not a lot of coincidence there. Yes, there is. So, which I appreciate.
We'll see how that plays out. Weirdly enough, they appear in one episode in the first season, but both Paco and the wrestler are in the key art of the series. So I'm assuming we'll see them again.
Ooh, I hope I can eat my words a little bit, but that is
no,
fun.
but for the time, it's definitely. I mean, that one's interesting because it is the Jade versus Paco, like who's better in a way.
Yeah.
And it is very much about the wrestler being unmasked and shamed, and not having the ox to be able to fight. That's interesting. But they do kind of give him his due because they show him on the TV later, remasked and winning. It's interesting. We'll have to see how that plays out. But I'm sure the rivalry comes back. It'll be interesting to see how they play that.
I know. And we are in Year of the Ox now.
Oh.
So, yeah, I know. We almost had this time to be just right. Lunar New Year was like a couple weeks ago, like February 12th, I want to say. Yeah. So, I mean, I say a few weeks off. It's been like 3. But you know what? Weeks in 2021, they all are just like ebbing and flowing and going along. But yeah, it's this show.
Show's good.
Great.
Show's
we don't
really,
have
really
many critiques to really say about the show. I think our biggest critique really is on watching stuff on Crackle, and even then we're like, it's free.
It's free. It's like, I mean, it's trying something. It's bringing us content.
If you ever
and like
digital like free cable antenna, I will tell you that experience is also hit and miss, but it's also free.
it's also free.
I haven't done that in many moons. That's also like early 2000s, 90s type deal. But yeah, that's just more for basic cable, which, I think it's good to note. Saturday morning cartoons. Something we really enjoyed as a collective community, which is something we're trying to do here on Primetime Party Time. Bring that back. So yeah, any lasting thoughts on Jackie Chan Adventures? Any more things?
What's your favorite end segment was when they asked Jackie a question?
So, yeah, the Ask Jackie section, which I think it's really funny. I talked about it in a previous episode where like the Sailor Moon sailor says, this is the era of a lot of cartoon shows that would have like this, like ask the creator, like a big life question. And I think the two that kind of stuck with me, I'll be interested to see which is yours, is like one of the beginning ones was just like about him wanting to be in an animated series.
I remember that one.
And just like fully being like, yeah, like I always grew up watching cartoons, so like I want to be a cartoon. So then I made it happen. Look, here I am.
Yeah, that was great.
It's just like adorable. And yeah, I talked about it earlier, but I also like the one where he talked, yeah, and that was part of it too. It's like he was talking about always being his own stuntman, and he said it was a lot about like kind of his legacy. Like he wanted his kids to know that like when they would see the scenes, and he says like when you're a stuntman, you would always turn around at the camera, and like that would end up getting cut, and it would end up being, the main actor would be the one that is seen. But he was like, what I want my kids to see is the one where you flip around and then it's the same person, like it's me. I just did all the moves and I'm there. No editing needed. Which obviously now he's like later in his career. So it'd be interesting to see. But like I think even so, like you do kind of watch like, and I remember watching movies farther on, it's like obviously the action scenes don't always end up being as like, they're very like just insane in his early career. And
Mhm.
it seems like they, tone it back a little bit later on, but it's still a lot of like flipping, twirling, jumping, kicking, fighting.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
all over the place. What was your favorite Ask Jackie?
My favorite was, I want to say it was at the dog and the pig episode. I'm still laughing at it. It was, "Hey Jackie, do you know how to cook?" And he just goes, "Yeah, I'll cook scrambled eggs, I'll cook water, I'll cook toast." Like, yeah, I can cook. Like, it's so good.
Oh, I remember another one where he said, they're like, "Hey Jackie, do you have pets?" And he was like, "So I had dogs. I loved them." And then he was like, "I like went, I'd be gone for like a long time for films, and then I came back. They bit me."
What? And
Oh
not to
my
mention,
gosh.
these have
Yeah,
like such
he said that,
frenetic.
and he's just like, "So, not a really great process there." I just remember being like, "Wait, so you're just saying like, yeah, as an actor, like, maybe you can't have, like, big dogs because they might bite you."
I do love this though. I love that this is an era of Saturday morning cartoons far after they're like, my understanding is that they were created strictly to sell a bunch of toys, and then now they're
Oh,
just
no.
vying for programming, and so the qualities come out, and we're just in this great era of it. You were talking about PBS animation, so I do want to give a big shout out to Cyber Chase. Susan Blue, also the voice director on Cyber Chase. So this is what I'm
Wow.
talking about. And yeah, I mean, otherwise, not too much more on Jackie Chan Adventures. Wonderful show. Very excited to continue watching and here on this show on Primetime Party Time. Anything else from you?
No, just couldn't recommend it more. Go down a Jackie Chan Adventures rabbit hole. You won't be mad.
That's it for this week's Primetime Party Time. Thank you for joining us. Find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Hit us up at info@ptptshow.com. If you can't find us, if you want to chat, you can also chat with us on our chat room, on our site, or leave us a voicemail. This show couldn't have been made without the following amazing people. We're talking artwork by Fen at FenLatte on Instagram, theme song by Jay Wright. Find him at jwrightmusic.com website. Thanks to Coco, and a special thanks to BMAC for helping us put this episode together. I guess if nothing else, catch us next Monday night here at 9 p.m. at ptptshow.com. And we still got a couple seconds, but I don't have any more last words. So music's going to play out soon. We'll get you guys all back here next Monday.
Now, you can
Very
mash
good
it out
dance.
to like Jackie Chan, Talisman.
Wait, did we talk about how the end theme song of season 1 is just Wheatus's punk ass bitch repurposed?
Oh man,
We
that
didn't-
was what we were gonna say.
Wait, sing it. See, how does it go? How does it go?
Ah,
I don't even remember.
no, I know. I would have to listen to it again, but. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the one.
Now you gotta find it now. You always do somehow.